So in about a week and a half, I have two acting projects coming up. I am starring in a short film, and I'm also playing a character in I think it's a short film that's going to be pitched for a feature film. Either way, I'm playing two different characters in two different projects. And we're filming them on the same day. And I've noticed my brain falling into an old habit that really used to make the process of acting, and specifically preparing for a character, very tedious, very tumultuous. It was a pattern of perfectionism, a pattern of thinking, oh, I need to prepare this and prepare that, and I need to study this and study that, and I need to learn every single morsel of my character inside and out, and then I need to really find a way to truly embody it, and all of this just over preparation, overthinking, and making the process really hellish. But this time around, I'm lucky in the sense that I feel I have a deeper connection with my intuition that is saying, what if acting actually isn't that difficult? What if it's much easier than your mind is letting you think? And then it hit me. I was like, oh yeah, acting is very, very simple. Acting is one of the most natural and simple things that pretty much all of us are doing every single day, every single moment of our lives. Because we're all playing characters every single day. Because fundamentally, we all believe that we are this character that we believe to be Will, or Jess, or Harriet, or Simon, right? We believe ourselves to be fundamentally a person in this life who has a personality, all these likes, dislikes, worldview, opinions, beliefs, we have this network of all these different thoughts and ideas and perspectives, and that are constantly changing, by the way. I mean, are you the same person, the exact same person that you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago? No. But you were present for all the different versions of you that there have been throughout your life so far, right? And yet you still believe yourself to fundamentally be the character that is being played, the ever-shifting mound, the ever-changing collection of all of these parts that create this pseudo-identity, this sense of an I, this sense of an entity within your awareness. And the thing is, we're not just playing one character though. We act differently depending on who we're around, right? You'll probably notice that when you're around your parents, you behave differently than when you're around, your friends or your lover, or when you're alone, right? So we're always shifting as well. We're playing separate little sub-characters under the umbrella of our core character. So in a very real sense, we're all very, very, very talented Oscar-worthy actors, because we're constantly on stage. We're constantly performing. But the caveat is that we're not aware we're performing. We truly believe that we are the person that our mind says we are. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's the hidden ingredient. Maybe that's why we're all such good actors. Because we have no idea we're acting. By the way, if you can hear that squeaking noise, yeah, don't mind that. That's just the clutch in my car. I think it needs a lot of oil on it. So I apologize if that's annoying. But this whole constantly performing analogy type thing I'm getting at here actually reminds me of a quote or a story I heard from, I think, some sort of spiritual teacher, where it was essentially, it kind of actually explaining the exact same thing I've just kind of explained, albeit a lot more elegantly. It was something about the average person, or the person who's fully identified with their ego, with the noise in their head. They go on stage to perform a character, say they're performing a king, right? And everyone's, bowing down to them and treating them as if they're holier than thou, right? and they go on the stage, they perform their part beautifully, right? And everyone else performs their parts beautifully. But when the show's over and the curtain draws, that king goes home to his wife and kids and starts ordering his wife and kids around as if he were their king. Everyone else left their character on that stage. Everyone else knew the context of what was truly going on. So they went on stage, they performed their character, they had fun doing it, they loved it. And then they went home and they went back to who they truly are. But the king lived on. Because the person performing the king has no idea that he actually isn't the king. That's not all that he is. That he is something beyond the king. He is something that gives life to the king. He is something that the king needs in order to exist. Yet, he doesn't need the king. He was here before the king, and he will be here after the king. Most people today are that king. But even myself, even though I've realized it, I still find myself getting caught up in some sort of character. I still have many moments where it's almost like becoming lucid in a dream, and it's like, oh yeah, wait, I'm not actually this person. I'm not the one that's actually annoyed right now. I'm not the one that actually feels like they need this right now, or feels like they're under threat right now. Like, I am something that's aware of that anger happening, or that attachment happening, or that fear happening. I am something that's aware of all of these different things rising and falling. And I'm also aware, I've also observed my mind a lot, trying to build new identities for me, trying to create new characters, just create a sense of something solid that it can latch onto, and then build a conceptual worldview and life around. Like, it wants to build the person, and then from that it wants to build that person's purpose and why they're here, and then it wants to build like the idea of what the truth of existence is, or something that gives this life a sense of predictability, something that gives the mind a sense of stability, of safety, right? Our minds hate the unknown, because our minds see that unknown as a threat to our survival. Because if you can't predict what's going to happen, or if you don't know, quite frankly, what any of this is truly, because let's be real, we don't, and anyone who thinks that they do or is sure they know what all of this is, more than likely, I can't say 100% guarantee, maybe there are people out there who somehow know what the truth of existence is, but more than likely, if someone is telling you that they know 100% what all of this is, what it all means, what our purpose is, why we exist, chances are they've just got a very, very, very strong mental concept that they've built from certain experiences they've had and ideas they've been told, and all these little pieces that their mind has been given throughout their whole life that have kind of coagulated together this kind of construct within their subconscious that feels very real. You know? And then they project it out onto this world. And that's what we're all doing. Or at least that's what our minds are always constantly trying to do. And then the dangerous thing is that, our minds do that long enough, and we start to see these projected assumptions about life and reality and who we are and who all the other people around us are and what this all means and what our purpose is and blah, 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 blah. And, that person's bad, that person's good because this blah, 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 and conflict and war, violence, blah, blah. The whole thing. Whole spectacle, Yeah, the dangerous thing is we start to basically see all of that stuff that our minds are projecting outwards, and we see them as fact. We think we're right and everyone else is wrong. We're no longer unified under this, just pure observation that we don't actually really know what's truly going on. And instead of being unified in that unknown that our minds hate so much, we all take up positions and roles, and we all inhabit, therefore, like different pocket dimensions, different realities. We're all still within the same, like, objective reality, I think. I don't know. But from what I currently understand, it seems that, yeah, we're all still in the same objective base reality, but our minds all build these individual personal filters that we then cast onto that base. So it's like we're all wearing different types of sunglasses, different shades, and so if someone's wearing like an orange lens and someone else is wearing like a blue lens, those two people, they could see the same actual base event happening, but have two completely different experiences of it, because they interpret what's happened differently based on their own beliefs of right, wrong, just hundreds, thousands, maybe even billions of different mental projections going on in their subconscious minds, all dependent on the way they've been raised, the things they've been taught, the culture they grew up in. Yeah, it's crazy. It's so complex, and yet at the end of the day, from what I've experienced personally, yeah, it's ultimately all just mental noise. From my own experience of observing these thoughts and watching them come in and out, and watching how often my mind is trying to create some sense of identity, or like trying to claim that it knows what that is, and it knows what that is, and it knows how this works and that works, and trying to create like a mental mind map, or a mental, framework for reality. Like, it just doesn't want to accept the fact that I actually don't know. And it's like, I can see it in everyone else as well, especially the people who are like certain that they're right. They have a mental position, they have an idea, and they're like, no, this is right. And like, we've all met people like that, and then you may suggest something else, and they get actively like triggered just from like the suggestion of something that opposes their current worldview. It's like they're so sure of it. And it's like, I used to be so sure of like my own worldviews and stuff, and now I'm no longer sure of anything. But within that comes such a greater sense of freedom, because there's much less clinging and defensiveness, and yeah, there's less of it. But yeah, like I said, I can still observe my mind trying to create meaning and trying to create narratives and come up with stories, and yeah, paint filters onto everything, instead of just resting and just observing and just seeing things as they are. How crazy would that be if I could just rest and just see things as they are, all the time? That would be lovely. But yeah, the mind really doesn't like that, or at least the mind has been conditioned. It's like an addiction. It's like we've all been conditioned our whole lives to give everything meaning, and give ourselves a strong, solid sense of identity, and just fundamentally be identified with the processes that are happening within our own head. So fundamentally, that foundational addiction to identification with mental activity is, yeah, it's a strong one. And even when you see beyond it, it's still going to do everything it can to reassert itself and pull you back in. And again, that's why I said that, like, even though I've been on this spiritual journey of basically realizing the self, and then the mind reasserts itself, and then I feel like a person again, and then I remember the self, and then I feel like a person again. And by the way, when I'm saying the self, I mean like awareness, just pure consciousness beyond any sort of like shape or character or identity. Yeah, I've been on that kind of oscillation between those two things for a while now, and yeah, it's just an interesting phenomenon to be going through, you know. But it does make you realize how fundamentally kind of delusional we all have been conditioned to be as humans. But yeah, it makes us really good actors, though. I honestly forgot that this conversation was meant to be about acting. I've been just following that stream of thought for so long now. I just remembered that this was all about that this all started because I was making like an acting metaphor. But yeah, it makes us really good actors. So yeah, maybe acting is a lot easier than I think. That's the moral of this whole video here. All right, see you guys.